Hi, this is Jamie Diaz. Welcome to Barks to Basics. So today is a very special day. I have my good friend Cheryl V, because I don't want to mess up your last. Can you pronounce it right for me again?
Van Voorhees.
It's not as easy as I've said her name a million times, and I don't want to mess it up. But we are talking about reactivity. Dogs that are reactive to whatever, to other dogs, to people, to skateboards. And I brought Cheryl in because not only is she a professional in the field, but she also had, before she was a professional, a reactive dog. So, and I do need two reasons. I need my readers because I can't see. And I also went to Taylor Swift last night and got home very late. So it was an amazing concert if anybody wanted to go. So Cheryl, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yay. So let's talk about first your reactive dog and kind of how that started, how you knew she was reactive. Like, what was your kind of journey in the beginning with your reactive dog?
I've had plenty of dogs in my lifetime, but I wanted a German Shepherd puppy.
Of course.
And I got one, and she was not really like my typical puppy. She was more aloof, stayed away.
How old was she when you got her?
8 weeks.
So she, from the beginning.
Went to a breeder 3 times before I picked her out,
Wow.
or she picked me out, let's say.
But did you see that from the beginning with her, pretty early, the aloofness and?
I did not.
Okay.
Not till I brought her into my home.
Okay.
And she went through puppy class. She was fine. She played with other dogs. I was like super proactive in getting her out to socialize her, sat outside dog parks, went in if it was appropriate for her, because you can't always trust.
How did you know to do that?
I watched the other dogs and the owners. If some of the dogs looked like they were a little too aggressive or played a little rough, then I typically wouldn't go in. And she had a couple challenging experiences on walks where 2 dogs rushed us. Like, one was aggressive. Like, I thought we were going to get bitten. I picked her up and she screamed at the top of her lungs and urinated all over me.
Oh my gosh.
So I knew at that point, bad experience. And we know from our experience, dogs, single event learning.
Yep.
So now she's worried about other dogs. And, back in the day, look, I'm not a spring chicken. We didn't train our dogs much. They sat for their food.
Same.
Didn't really walk them much, you know.
Yep.
They were just hanging out with the family.
Yep.
But now we've evolved to all these sports and activities for our dogs and training, and we know socialization is so important. So, so then I didn't know what to do with this dog. Because then I'm walking her, and she's lunging and barking at dogs like 300 yards away. I can't even see the dog, and she's just like, Alright, and
yeah.
I always say, if you don't know what to do, you don't know what to do.
Right.
I absolutely did not know what to do with this dog. So,
Which I do, by the way, feel like most owners do not. That's why I do want,
yeah.
You
I
were a
was your
regular
typical
owner at that time.
Dog owner at
Yeah.
that point I knew some basic obedience. I could teach sit and down, the basics.
Right.
And, let's get our puppies together to play. Well, that wasn't happening because she was now, fearful
Yep.
of other dogs. So I had to seek out some professionals,
Okay.
learn some skills. And it was a journey. It was a long, pretty long journey. But I remember I stopped walking her in my neighborhood because you can't always trust your neighborhood dogs. You don't know if they're friendly or not, and everybody thinks all dogs love them and their dogs are going to be super friendly.
Mm-hmm.
Off-leash dogs are always an issue, so I would take her to safe places to walk her. I would then start to sit outside the dog park at a distance where she was calm and work with her with some
I'm
of the
surprised that you
skills.
did that as a regular owner, because I feel like, I teach taming Tarzan class, reactive dog class, and the first thing I tell owners is, of course, I always forget to shut off my ringer. The first thing that I tell owners is stop walking your dog if they're reactive. So I think the fact that you did that, probably because embarrassment, too much dog, a combination. I don't know.
It was stressful for me.
Yeah.
Like just to get, you just want to walk your dog.
Yeah.
You want to go for a walk after work with your dog and not worry and downregulate yourself from work.
Yeah.
So picking up the leash for me caused me a little stress, and I always had to make sure I had, high value food with me. And then there's off-leash dogs that charged us, and and I'm like, this isn't a good idea.
Yeah.
And the more I figured the more I did that with her, it was going to create more of a problem for her. Mm-hmm. She's not going to get used to dogs rushing us, or just acclimate to dogs on walks at a certain distance and be okay. She's just not going to do that. So I knew that.
Now, I know you said that there were some. Now, Cheryl is a certified force-free positive reinforcement dog trainer. She also worked 10 plus, it might even be 15 plus, with a very known and amazing behaviorist in our area. So we will get to that. So Cheryl has a lot of experience. But before we get into that, you did say you've used some aversive techniques or things. What did you try? And at what point did somebody recommend it to you, or you were just like, I have to do something?
I mean, back in the day, more aversives were used. So there was one time in my house, she was young, and I just held her on the ground. I just held her down. And I let go, and I said, I was like almost ready to cry. Mm-hmm. I was like, this is not cool.
Yeah.
This is not the way to train this dog or any dog. I need to learn some skills in a more positive manner. So, yeah,
I think you get it's so funny that you just said that, because this morning I talked to a friend that's also a client that is having trouble with their Doberman, and the Doberman is now 7 months old. They started school. They stopped in August. They took this 2 big break, and now the dog is lunging and everything. And he just told me this morning that he did that. The dog reacted. He held down the dog on the side. Now, the thing with that is, I was like, please don't do that. But he doesn't know what else to do.
Right.
He's stuck, and the dog does stop because they shut down, right? So for any trainer that does recommend for you to do that, it's called like the alpha roll. That is so like outdated information. And it doesn't feel good when you're doing it.
Right.
Like you said. So now at what point, was it a trainer? Was it when you started working for the behaviorist? At what point did you start getting some real information? Oh, and by the way, what was she reacting? Dogs, people, everything? Dogs. Okay.
Yeah.
So at what point did you start getting some information, or if you can even remember, was it when you started working with the behaviorist?
It was before that. I was working at Lucky Dog doing puppy classes and teaching some basic obedience.
Okay.
And they had a reactive dog program up there, so I took her through it to learn some skills. And
you
then
did?
I did, and then I started volunteering in the class so I could learn more. And that's how sort of segued into, I've always worked with behavior kids, as an educator for 35 years. So behavior always interested me.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, behavior is behavior. And then I had to put all this attention into my dog. And I thought, I'm teaching some classes here. Let me get educated further. And then I started volunteering for Dr. Adausta. Mm-hmm. And then I would be working holidays for her, or,
doing little things here and there.
And then I just segued into her full time.
So I love that you said behavior is behavior, because I wish, so this is the thing. I mean, you don't have children. I have children. A lot of people don't have children. So sometimes when I use that analogy, but you were an educator for so long, so you're used to dealing with children. And you have special people in your life too that you're used to dealing with children. But I think if people would recognize that, like, behavior is behavior. So just like we're not slapping our kids with rulers anymore, doing different things like that to them in school, even spanking and everything else is kind of like, ooh, because we've just learned how behavior works more, or maybe we've become more aware. So we don't do those things anymore to our children, but we do them to our dogs.
Right.
So once you made that shift in with her, how did she do in the class? Like after you came out of the class, like what kind of things can you tell like reactive owners from the beginning, right? You're new, you're hearing this and you're like, okay, I got to make a change. What would be like some number one things that you did maybe from the beginning besides the class that made a difference in like that you were able to walk her?
I mean, even after the class, and my couple of friends that were in the dog profession called me out on it, I avoided for a long time. If I saw a dog coming, I'm going another way. I don't want that stress for me or my dog.
Yeah.
You know, and the more that my dog was going to react, if we met multiple dogs on walks and she reacted 3 times, you know, her arousal level's not coming down to a point where I could do any work with her anyway, and I'm not going to be able to work on the emotional aspect of how she's feeling about that encounter.
Can you go into that a little bit? So you have a lot of experience because you did work with Dr. Radasta for so many years doing cases. Can you explain that a little bit? What happens to, in plain terms, don't use that big of words, Cheryl, because I know that you can, but little words. What happens to the body chemistry in a dog? Like, so you were saying your dog, so anybody who has a reactive dog, you're on a walk, your dog blows up, right? Okay, you keep walking, he blows up again, and he blows up again. So now you're saying, now my dog's blown up 3 times. What happens to the dog's body chemistry, and how effective will be their learning from that point?
Yeah, great question. So I equate this to humans. Let's say you've had a stressful day all day long, and you've been putting out fires all day long, fire after fire after fire. At the end of the day comes, and you just happen to drop a whole tray of like paper clips on the floor, and you just like crumble into like, I can't deal with this. Right? Because you've used all your coping skills throughout the day and you have nothing left. Right?
I love that.
So let's say I leave my house with my dog and she's at a very calm baseline. Then she goes over threshold, arousal level's up. We walk a little bit away from the dog, arousal level goes down, never back down to baseline. It's still up. So then we have another encounter. She goes over threshold, goes up even higher. We leave, comes down a little bit, but not even to the point where she was after the first reaction. And by the time you hit the third reaction, she's not going to even understand any of the skills that she knows, because the neurochemicals in her brain are like, I'm done.
Yeah.
Now I'm on high alert. I'm scanning the environment, and I just lost. She has no ability to return back to baseline. So at that point, I tell clients, turn around and go home.
Yeah. What do you think about when, like, I know I tell my clients this, but when I tell them don't walk your dogs, like you're saying, go home, like, so I'll ask them, did your dog react on every walk? Yeah. Yes, pretty much, at least once. I'll say, just stop walking your dogs until you have enough skill set that I can give you. It doesn't mean you're never going to be walking your dog. It might look a little bit different. It might be a little bit shorter, but the whole goal is to be able, for reactive dogs, we don't say don't walk your dog and that's the plan and you're just never walking them, right? Because you've done competitions. You were doing canine nose work competitions with your dog when I met you, I feel like you had a lot more control over her and you were taking her.
Yeah, I did a lot of work with her.
Yeah.
I mean, after I avoided, and my friends called me out on it, like, the skills you should. I'm like, you're right. I need to work with my dog.
Yeah.
But
you're as a professional too. I think it's like scary. Like, what could we say to people that I think reactivity is so hard for like regular people that do not have any skill set, which is not, I don't have a skill set in teaching someone piano or teaching gymnastics. Like I have 0 skill set. I could watch a YouTube video and I can see maybe like how to learn piano or do certain things, but it's not going to be the same as if I'm coached and my timing's going to be off. So what, like, number one, so I obviously always say like work with food, but I feel like with reactivity, it's like, you're off by 1 second and you've just...
nanosecond, you could get a reaction.
Yeah.
And it's not always food. You have to find the motivator for your dog.
Yeah.
It's not always food. I've used plenty of toys.
Yeah. Can we probably rule out maybe for reactivity praise in most
Oh, yeah.
scenarios.
Yeah, that's not going to hit
That's
the
not-
nitty-gritty of what's happening.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I like to get some baseline safety tools on board first. You know, you can avoid if you want.
Yeah.
Teach them a let's go, turn and go. If your dog has already lost it and is lunging and barking at what, and it doesn't even have to be another dog. It could be a truck. It could be a person, whatever it is. By the time they've blown it, it's like a person. Once the person is yelling at you, why are you talking to them? Because they're not hearing anything you're saying to them because they're already yelling and they can't even do what you're asking them to do because they're not hearing that. So turn and go. So you got to give them some safety tools to feel like they can get far enough away from the stimulus where your dog is calm.
Yeah.
So, and that's why the dog is reacting, right? They know if they lunge and bark, I'm going to look big and scary. Either my owner's going to take me away at the distance I can be calm, or that other owner is going to take their dog away really quickly. And that works for them.
Yeah.
Right. So you do have to give them some safety tools to at least get out of Dodge.
Yeah.
And then add some in to the, like I call it a toolbox.
Yeah.
Give them a toolkit out on walks. So what are you going to do when your dog is over threshold, lunging and barking? You got to turn and go.
Yeah.
Right. And then we have taught here where they turn back to me, away from the stimulus before they're over threshold, so that you can stay and do some work. Farther down into, you want to really work on the emotional aspect of how they're feeling about that stimulus.
Yeah. I was just going to say when you were saying that, I think the time to work on the things is not when they're over threshold.
Correct.
So like you said, when they're working on something, if your dog is already, so I see this even in my class. So I use a term, turn and go, don't go slow. Just get, all of our dogs are on a harness. So they're not, if you're pulling your dog away, now you're turning and you may have to pull a little bit sometimes when you turn, but I use the example of because I don't know why reactive dog owners will just stand there while their dog is barking.
Like do something.
Not moving. They're just
something.
Standing. So turn and go, don't go slow. I said you may have to guide and pull your dog a little. They're on a harness, but how I use the example of if my son or daughter is about to walk in the street and there's a car coming and I grab their arm and pull them back a little bit, I wasn't correcting them. I was just guiding them and keeping them safe. So it's the same. That's what I use because sometimes the dog's stuck. They're not going to, you can do whatever, you can ask them to do whatever you want once they're over a threshold, So I usually just let's go, still happy voice, but kind of turn. I think people get stuck. They have no idea what to do. And I don't know, you've definitely experienced this. How do you explain to clients, the dog's not being bad, that this isn't a behavior you want to correct? So there's so many trainers on social media now that are whether it's a shock collar or a leash pop is correcting. They're kind of shutting down their emotions because they think that they're being bad. Have you had those clients that, how do you explain that to them? I think it's so hard for them to understand your dog is not being bad or not listening. They're literally not thinking when they're doing that. So have you found any clients that it's been difficult, or is there any analogies that you use to clients to kind of explain that to them?
I do. And I revert back to a human example. So I do not like snakes, terrified. When I'm fearful, because fear presents in different ways, fight, flight, freeze. I'm a flight, I'm leaving, right? So let's say I come into the podcast, I'm out in the lobby, and you're in here, and you say, Cheryl, come in and sit down, and we're going to get started. No problem. I can do that. Now, there's an aquarium in here with a snake in it. I know how to come into a room and sit down. It is not happening because the neurochemical in my brain is saying, you're getting out of here because there's that scary thing in that room. Same thing happens to the animals in the animal kingdom. So when I put it in terms like that to the owners, they're like, oh, yeah, I'm afraid of spiders.
Yeah.
Now I remember how scary that is for me, and it's not good or bad. It's in the moment, this is what's happening. and I can't do what you're asking me to do.
So let's take that perfect example. And you're saying, this is for me, like what happens in the dog. Okay, you're saying, I am not coming in here. The aquarium's right here, right? This is a small room. And I say, all right, Cheryl, we have to do this interview. Let's move to the bigger room, right? Outside and just say there's not a wall. You could still see it, but now we're in the bigger room, right? So maybe you're able to tolerate. But then I say, all right, every time you come in to the room, the snake's going to be far away. So you're like, I can do this, right? But every time you come and sit down, thank you so much for like making the effort. Here's $1,000.
I was just going to say, what's my motivator to actually go in that room?
Yeah.
Is it going to be food? Is it going to be money? Is it going to be something else? You would have to figure that out. It is for me with snakes, there's no way it's going to be food.
Like, it's okay.
No,
Right.
it's not going to be food.
Yeah.
Yeah, $1,000, I can do that if it's a safe enough distance where my brain can say rationally, maybe it's elevated a little bit,
Yeah.
but at a distance where I can be calm,
Yeah.
then yes.
So I think people think, so I use this example too, like on an airplane. You're afraid of flying. You get on, I give you $1,000 every flight. Now, that is not going to necessarily make you love flying, but it might get you to a point that can think a little bit more rationally and say money's a real motivator for you, right? You don't even have money to pay for your house, for anything. So you're motivated for that reason. You're able to think a little bit more. It doesn't mean you're going to start loving flying, but you might be able to at least like go on a plane a little bit more without having those panic attacks. And same with like the snake in the room. You might be able to be like, all right, I got this. Like, I got this. The snake's all the way over there. He's not moving. I've been to this room several times, right? And I realize it's safe. I'm getting my $1,000. You know, and I think that's what we have to kind of translate what happens for dogs, like in their brain. They are the ones that determine how safe it's. I can't tell you, Cheryl, it's fine. Don't worry. He's in a cage. He's in a glass thing. He's not going to get out.
There's no rational thinking once that neurochemical reaction occurs.
I love that.
Right?
Yeah.
It's not rational.
Yeah. And with our dogs, I think that's so huge. I wish we can get to all people. I mean, when you work one-on-one with people, they understand. I think they see if you keep that dog under their threshold, you're able to make progress. And all of a sudden, even in that one session, you're like this far from the snake as when you started here, and the dog's coping with it. It's just so hard to have certain people understand. Like my friend this morning, he was correcting his dog. And I said, please do not, you're shifting him the other way, right? Because what if you came into this room and I slap you in the face every time you come in, or I pinch you? Cheryl,
I'm
right?
not coming in.
I do a little pinch and you're like, I do not, now I really don't want to, not only do I not want to come in because of the snake, but now I don't want to come in because of the pain that I'm feeling.
And now I don't want to come in because now I don't like you because I'm associating you with everything that's happening.
Yeah.
So it's going to build.
Yes, it's going to build. And building can also turn into a bite. Sorry
to interrupt.
No.
There is scientific, I like science, scientific research shows that aversives don't work.
Yeah.
They're going to increase fear or potentially increase aggression.
I don't think people are reading those research studies, because when
True.
I post, it's kind of a little bit scary, because when I put a post about anti-prong or shock or something on there, the amount of comments that I get on how wonderful these tools are is a little bit like,
I mean, the tools, they do look like they work. Shock collar looks like
well, they do work,
so,
right?
Let's say you and I are walking down the street. You know I'm afraid of snakes. I'm going to stay on that same scenario. Now you have a shock collar on me, and you're like, I'm going to help you. Every time we come across a snake, I'm going to hit the zapper, and you're going to get shocked. So now I'm walking with you. I'm not going to react at all, because now I know I'm going to have pain because I have this collar on that I know has caused me pain, even one time. So it looks like, when we see a snake, there's no reaction because I'm keeping it all in.
Yep.
Right? And now I'm starting to not like going for walks with you. And it looks like it works because there's no reaction.
Right. Look,
Right?
I fixed her.
Yeah. But you didn't change the emotional aspect of how I actually feel about that particular stimulus,
Right.
which in the long run, why wouldn't we want to do that?
Right. Now the collar's off. What are you going to do when you see the snake? You're not going to go towards it.
Right.
You're probably going to run even faster.
Yeah. So it's a big build cycle of how it can explode into.
Yeah.
But people, they do think it works.
So I know, well, okay. I know some things we can fix from the beginning, right? So some things we can fix from the beginning is socializing your dog properly. So I think people think socializing your dog means just throwing them with a bunch of dogs or meeting a bunch of people and everybody like petting them and grabbing them, when I think that sometimes is almost worse. Like the dog needs to enjoy the interactions, or every stranger that your dog sees, they can throw a piece of food or something. So I know early socialization is huge. I think the problem is a lot of people miss that. And then now what?
They'll come to a puppy class, and once they graduate a 4 or 5, 6 week puppy class, they think their dog is done.
Yeah.
Okay.
You probably saw that a lot.
A lot
of puppy classes.
I would always preach, you got to keep getting your dog out. They also have to understand their dog's body language. Mm-hmm. So many times the tail wag is misconstrued as friendly. I can pet this dog because it's wagging its tail, and then it ends up 90% of the time the dog wasn't friendly and you're going to get a bite. Mm-hmm. Or you're letting your people come up to your puppy and the tail is tucked. They're not enjoying that encounter, but you think it's great because everybody's petting your puppy, right? So teaching some body language of how to read your puppy is important too.
And
then after puppy class, they enter into social maturity. You got some fear phases that are coming in to effect where, like I said, I took my shepherd to puppy class and she did great. She had a couple incidents that affected, plus genetics. We know genetics plays like 50% of who I am. Thank you, my parents. The good parts and not the good parts, not so good, I went back to the breeder a year later with her. And, I had seen the mother there. I didn't see the father. And when she was a puppy, the mother was pretty receptive to us approaching the puppies, which was great.
Yeah.
But when I went back a year later, the mother was out in the field in the pasture, and I approached, and she tucked her tail and moved away from me.
Really?
And I was like, that's partly why I have a fearful dog. I have a fearful mother here.
Yes.
Too. But, I didn't know at that point.
Yeah.
Back then to do all that, look at X, Y, and Z when I'm at a breeder.
Yeah.
Now it would be a whole different story.
A whole I don't know if I think I'd be too, I'd have too many questions. It's almost like when you know too much.
It could be like, okay, there's no puppy in the world I can get now
Right.
because I know too much, and that puppy's this and that puppy's that, and right?
When you were saying, I was literally going to say that, and I stole that from Dr. Radasta. You probably heard it, or you might have told me about the 50%. Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, I want to go back to those fear periods, but unfortunately, you can do mostly everything right, and you can still have a dog that's reactive. And you're like, I've done this,
Correct.
I've done this, and that comes from the DNA. But if you did not do everything right, your dog would have been way worse if you didn't socialize, if you didn't do these extra steps to kind of,
I mean, I worked hard with my shepherd, Zila.
Yeah.
And sometimes you forget, and I'll talk to Dr. Dawson, and I'll say, Zila was pretty good, and she wasn't that bad. And she's like, you did a boatload of work with her.
You did. I remember.
I used to make practice sessions. I'd be like, we're getting in my car and I'm going to go work on my skills. We're going to go downtown Lake Worth, always at this distance she could be successful at. But if you want to get to the point where you can walk your dog in any scenario, you got to get out there and practice a little bit.
Yeah.
When I worked with clients, I kid them a little bit and I say, you're going to go out in a little bit and you're going to be looking for dogs. And they're like, that's not happening.
Yeah.
I'm running the other way. And I said, your confidence is going to go up.
Yes.
And you're going to go, once you get some skills on board, some safety tools to know that your dog is not going to go over threshold, and some tools to work on, you're going to go seek out those scenarios so you can get some work.
Yes.
And get better. And you become this great A-team, you and your dog. And it's like a confidence builder for the owner.
For both, yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Plus the dog learns,
so.
Mom's not going to let me go over threshold.
Yeah,
We're cool now.
I think too. If I guess if you have a reactive dog and you're saying I'm not doing, like, I'm going to get in the car and know that your dog's not going to get better. I mean, a lot of times we do have medications on board, which just help. So I don't want to say, I always refer to a veterinarian. I don't ever suggest meds or anything like that, but I'm sure you could too.
So
I can see when a dog needs them.
My
Tell me.
soapbox. I have a
Yes.
soapbox.
Oh, I love soapbox.
I'm a certified dog professional. Stay in your own lane,
Yeah.
right?
But can you not?
Board certified veterinary behaviorist, went to school to learn the
Medicate.
knowledge that they know.
Yeah.
Animal psychiatrists out there. We go hand in hand with them with the BMOD piece.
Mm-hmm.
We can, sometimes you get to the point with a client where you're spinning your wheels.
Mm-hmm.
Like we are trying to get some BMOD, but it's going so slow or you're kind of going backwards.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, I refer to Dr. Adasta.
Yes.
Because sometimes, just like humans, you need supplement or a medication to get the neurochemicals down enough for us to be able to do our job successfully.
Yes.
Not 100% all patients need meds, but when they do, just like humans, some humans need meds,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
To help them so that you can do some BMOD if you're in some therapy and stuff.
BMOD is behavior modification.
Should have defined that.
No, but to your point, stay in your lane. But I can tell when you're said. I guess it's more of spinning your wheels. I can tell when a dog needs something. Could be a supplement. Could be medication. I have no idea, but I do know when it's time to refer, because you get stuck.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
You're stuck, or the dog is just like, you're kind of plateauing, and that's when I know to refer to behaviorist, veterinarian.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I have seen a lot of reactive dogs because they're able to kind of balance that brain chemistry, do really well on was your dog on? I can't remember. Was she on anything?
None.
Nothing? Wow.
I will say Dr. Dasa recommended some, and given my scenario of how my life was, I didn't have a lot of people in and out of my house. It wasn't, kids weren't around. There weren't a lot of dogs coming in, so I was like, I'm just going to do a boatload of work.
Oh, that's...
Could she have done a lot better, quicker on a medication? Possibly, but I was dedicated to just try it.
Yeah.
Now, if I got to the point where we weren't making progress, then yeah, absolutely. She's going on a med or a supplement.
Yeah.
To help her. I don't want that for her body physiologically.
Yeah.
To have that chemical reaction happening. Imagine being an anxious person 24 hours a day. The physiological aspect of that is going to be detrimental to your health.
Yes.
I wouldn't want that for her.
Yes.
But I was not going to say I was lucky. I put a lot of work in with her.
Yeah.
But I wasn't opposed to a med or a supplement if I needed to have it on board.
So, which I think, again, talk to your veterinarian or go to by the way, a behaviorist. I see all these trainers saying they're behaviorists. They're not. There's a handful of real behaviorists. I forget what the number is now that they're up to. It's not a lot in the world that are veterinary behaviorists.
Yeah, they just had a class.
Right. So, so I was going to say okay, I did puppy class, I socialized my dog, I did all this stuff, and the DNA comes into play. I know when I usually see reactive dogs, like you were saying, all of a sudden they're reactive. What age have you seen the most, like, they're fine until, like you were talking about, those fear periods? So what ages are people sometimes, and obviously I know it's not absolute, what month, how old will the dog be when sometimes all of a sudden you're like,
I mean, we know social maturity 1 to 3 years of age.
Yeah.
I mean, Zilla was good for a while.
Before one.
Before one.
Yeah.
And then the incidents happened early on, but she was still able to be successful in puppy class.
Mm-hmm.
I was socializing her, and then it
Boom.
wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she did become more fearful.
Yeah.
As she matured, too.
Yeah.
Based on early on single event learning. And then,
which always isn't the case.
Which is, I mean, even for
Right.
me, I was like, God, I did everything right.
Yeah.
You know, she was fine in puppy class.
Yeah.
What's happening here?
I think
But
that's
then I
frustrating.
didn't have my knowledge base either then.
Yeah.
Then I was like, you need help. I mean, there's plenty of times as a regular puppy owner that I saw her issue evolve, I cried. I was like, I don't know what to do with my dog. I can't walk her.
Yeah.
You know, I would talk to dog professionals. I'm like, what do I do with this dog? Like,
That's why you have a dog, right? Like,
yeah,
to walk and to.
and I was excited. I was like, oh, there's, now that I could do agility with her. And, she even went to agility class for a while.
Oh.
After puppy class, she went to some basic obedience. She went to agility.
You're like, this is great. She's doing all the stuff. All
yeah,
the
I couldn't
things.
compete with her because at that point, she was reactive. I thought she'd run off the course and
Yeah.
maybe possibly attack another dog. But I still wanted to do a sport with her. And that's how you and I met. I got into nose work.
Yep.
Because nose work is great for our reactive dogs because it's one at a time.
Yep. Yeah. We met at the National Association of Canine Scent Work for a certification in Tampa. Were we in Tampa?
We were in Tampa.
In Tampa.
Yeah, that was a funny encounter.
That was. I think you were sitting
Dr.
right
Radowski
next
said,
to me.
"Oh, you're going to meet my friend Jamie." I didn't even know what you looked like. I didn't have a picture. For some miraculous, funny reason,
You sat
you
right
were
in front of
behind me.
Yes.
And we were being a little humorous and snarky about some stuff that was happening with the instructors. And I turned around and we kind of connected. And then it was like, are you Jamie? And you're like, are you Cheryl? And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so weird.
I remember that like exact room. So funny.
It was crazy.
What was it? So what could we tell people? You have a reactive dog, and obviously I would say find a professional, but what would you be looking for, right? If you just have your client just moved to Minnesota and they have a very reactive dog, what are you going to guide them to do?
Well, I would tell them to look up a certified dog professional that has experience working with reactive dogs. That's all positive rewards based training.
How would you think you would find that? Do you think through the CPDT or like?
I mean, there's
because everyone says they, you know what I mean. They're like, how do you?
I mean, and that's a good question. How do you find a good trainer, even if your dog doesn't have any issues? What are the questions you're going to ask the trainer? What are you going to do if my dog gets it right? What are you going to do when my dog gets it wrong?
Oh, I love that.
Right? Because what you do when my dog gets it wrong is going to tell a big picture.
Stealing that.
Right?
That is,
I'm going to yank on their leash. I'm going to shake a can of pennies. I'm going to squirt water on them. No, sorry, you're not. You're not the trainer for me. I'm going to use a shock collar only if nothing else works. No, I'm sorry, you're not.
Yeah.
That is not the trainer I want.
Those are two really good questions that you can ask. Because I think I've said this before. Every other profession, every other thing to fix your toilet, to everything, we hire a professional to do it, right? I'm not going to try and fix, I can maybe change a light bulb, but I don't even barely want to do that. We find somebody. There's handyman to do this. There's people that specifically work on these issues. But then when it comes to a live animal in your house, we think we got it, that we can just do it. Now, I think everybody should put money away for a trainer just because I feel like if they're a good trainer, they can make your life easier, even if you don't have a reactive dog. Tips and tricks for potty training. Like I have owners, they're struggling on things that if you just put a little bit of money aside for the training part, I think that should be like in your budget of getting a dog. Yeah. This much is for training.
I think you're putting money into the bank. So you're putting money into even a puppy with no issues. Perfectly well-balanced. Not really a fan of the word balanced. Mm-hmm. Well-rounded, bomb-proof puppy, right? Put the work in to get it, with a trainer to train some basic skills, then you're going to reap the payout of the deposit that you put into this puppy, and you come out with a fabulous dog.
Yes.
Barring genetics and some single event learning that could occur.
Yeah.
But, there's a lot of rounded dogs out there.
Yeah. You almost said balance.
I did say balance again.
We don't like balance because there's balance trainers and which uses positive reinforcement unless it's not going to work, and then they use correction, which makes no sense, by the way. But I would say, wrapping up with the reactive dogs, I would say you have to find a force-free trainer. Do not use correction. I will say, I usually get the shock collar dogs after, and they are so messed up, like psychologically, and it's almost like you can, and it's funny, you mentioned this before, I meant to bring it up too. You said you may only have to do it once. So I hear this from clients that use shock collars. And by the way, if they're using it, I'm not the one to work with. You know, if they're not going to stop the usage of using it, then it's not going to work out. But they will say, I don't even use the shock anymore. I just have to put it on. And why do you think that is? I think Dr. Radassa just posted a couple months ago, she posted the fear response in dogs of what happens to their body is like literally the same thing as if you were shocking them. So you can make yourself feel better saying, I don't even have to shock my dog anymore. But just from shocking him that one time might have been enough to create this fear response and said this kind of like, oh crap, I have this thing on again. And can you imagine if I had a collar on you and I was like, at some point today, I'm going to shock you. I don't know when it is, and it is going to hurt.
I'm already thinking I hate you.
Right? Okay. Can you imagine how anxious you would be through the whole day? Yeah. If it's going to happen. So I would say for reactive, I mean, I can talk for hours on this. We can talk
forever on this topic.
I would say find a force-free trainer. You have to find what your dog is motivated by, whether it's, mostly it's going to be food or toys. Sometimes it's like with the behavior, Grisha Stewart's behavior adjustment training. Sometimes there's those dogs that are too amped up. They'll use space as a reward.
I did that with my shepherd.
Oh, you did too?
Yes, because we reached the plateau where I couldn't get closer than 35 feet to another dog. So I did use that technique with her, and I got a lot closer.
Yeah, I think all of these techniques, you need a professional.
Yes.
To help you.
Absolutely.
For sure. So if you do have a reactive dog, make sure that you are contacting your professional, force-free, find your dog's motivation. Stop walking your dog if they are reactive until you get help, because you're just...
I like to give them a stress vacation. Everybody gets a stress vacation.
Owners, a couple of things I'm stealing.
And the dog. Like, you can provide enrichment in home for a couple of weeks and then start to walk your dog during times when there's less dog traffic.
Yes.
Yes. There's a lot of people that'll get up early to walk their dogs because there's no dogs out, or later after the busy walking time when people are getting home from work. You walk
5:30. Don't walk your dog.
Don't walk then. Like, take the stress out of it for everybody, and then get some skills on board, and then start to walk more in the more busy times.
I love that stress.
I also like, for reactive dogs, I like to ask the owners, you have options, right? Do you just want to manage your dog? Do you just want to get out of Dodge every time you see a dog? That's fine. It's your dog. You can do that. Do you want to go all the way to the finish line and be able to, sit at a cafe with your dog? We can get you there too. And I also tell owners, pick and choose what party your dog wants to go to once you have these skills. Like, there were times where, I think I'm going to work with my dog. So she liked chicken, so we, always had the treat bag full of chicken. We would go walk wherever we were working and come home. But there was times where I thought, is she going to have a good time? It's going to be really busy. There's going to be a lot of people. We're going to be working hard. Does she really want to be at this party? And do I really want to be working this hard while I'm at the party, meaning the walk?
Yeah.
At the area.
Yes.
One time I went downtown Palm Beach Gardens on St. Patrick's Day with her.
Oh.
Ooh, we were working hard. There were people, dogs, kids everywhere.
Yeah, that's too much.
But if
I would not be that owner. I mean, for me, but that's how you have to know, right?
You give choices.
You want to work, right?
A lot of times when I tell owners, does your dog really want to go to that party? And you're like, what? And I was like, do you want to go to every party you're invited to? And you're like, no. And I'm like, sometimes you make that decision for yourself and for your dog.
Yeah.
But also know the clear path. What is the owner's goal for this dog?
Yes.
Is it realistic? And then go from there, build the plan.
Yeah, I love that. Be realistic with your options. I would love, Cheryl, for you to come back because we have so many topics that we
Absolutely
can
would love to
talk about. Cheryl has so many insights and analogies that I'm stealing, but so much education, and it's nice to be able to like talk to somebody that actually has so much education in the field that you're not only you're coming a lot from the medical and the science, not so much the medical and the science behind it because of who you're with, because you were with Dr. Radasta and really
like I learned
so much.
Boatload of information from her. I did go to Gene Donaldson Academy as the dog trainer.
Which is a really hard school.
It was pretty intense.
Yes.
And I'm an educator at heart. So if I can teach somebody anything and be successful at it, that's what I love to do.
Love it.
I'd be glad to come back anytime.
Yay. Okay. Well, again, Barks to Basics, Jamie Diaz. You can listen to us on anywhere podcasts are. So Apple Music, Spotify, Audible, and also it'll be on video on the YouTube channel. But thank you for listening. We will be back with more on this reactivity. Thank you again, Cheryl. We'll see you next time.
Great to be here.